In August of 2021, a police body camera in a parking lot in Utah recorded a young woman crying, a cut below her eye, apologizing to no one in particular. By the end of the stop, 2 officers had decided she wasn't the victim, her fiancé, calm and apologetic, was. They let the couple drive on. 3 weeks later, that woman, Gabby Petito, 22 years old, was dead. And the man they'd waved down the highway would stay silent about where she'd gone for the next 6 weeks. This is the story of the warning that was already on video, and the people who watched it and looked away. Before any of that, Gabby Petito was just a young woman trying to build a life she felt proud of. She grew up on Long Island, the oldest of 4 siblings, the one who organized the family group chats, remembered every birthday, and always volunteered to plan the next get-together. Friends describe her as someone who narrated her own life out loud, mid-laugh, mid-plan, always turning the camera toward herself and the people she loved, not out of vanity, but because she genuinely wanted to remember every version of the day. In the spring of 2021, she and her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, converted a van into a rolling home and set out to drive across the country, documenting the trip for a small but growing following. She posted about sunsets over national parks, about her dog waiting back home, about the particular freedom of not knowing exactly where she'd sleep the next night. To thousands of strangers scrolling past, it looked like the trip of a lifetime, a young couple with nothing ahead of them but open road. But the people closest to her, her mother, her stepfather, a small circle of friends, had started noticing something underneath the highlight reel. Messages that came less often than before. A tone in her texts that felt stiff, almost scripted, nothing like the way she actually talked. Nobody had proof of anything yet. Just a feeling, quietly shared between the people who knew her best, that the woman posting sunsets every single day had gone strangely quiet in every way that actually mattered. By August, the couple had been on the road for nearly 3 months. Records later pieced together by investigators describe an argument that had been escalating for weeks, not one bad night, but a pattern, repeating and getting louder each time it happened. On August 12, a witness near Moab, Utah, called 911 after reportedly seeing the van's driver strike the woman in the passenger seat. When police pulled the van over minutes later, both officers' body cameras were already rolling, capturing everything that happened next in real time, footage that would later be watched by more people than almost any body cam recording in American history. What that footage shows, according to records later made public, is a young woman who cannot stop crying, who insists she has OCD and just wants everything to be perfect, who blames herself, out loud and repeatedly, for the fight that had just happened. It shows an officer trying, in real time, to work out who the aggressor actually was. And it shows the officers ultimately deciding that Brian, composed, articulate, quick to apologize on her behalf, was the one who needed protecting from her, not the other way around. No arrest was made that night. The couple was separated for a few hours to cool down, given a place to stay apart from each other. By morning, they were back in the van together, continuing the trip as if the entire stop had never happened. Weeks later, on August 25, Gabby called her mother. It would be one of the last times anyone in her family heard her actual voice. After that, the texts kept arriving, but her mother would later say they didn't read like her daughter's words at all. Stiff. Formal. Missing the exclamation points and inside jokes that had filled every single message before that day. On September 1, Brian Laundrie drove the van back into Florida. Alone. Gabby was not with him, and he offered no explanation. When her family started asking where she was, over calls, texts, and eventually in person, he said nothing at all, and then, within days, he stopped answering them entirely. On September 11, 10 days after anyone outside the Laundrie family had heard from Gabby, her mother filed a missing persons report. Brian's parents told investigators their son had simply gone hiking. Then, days later, they said he was gone too, they didn't know where, and weren't looking, they claimed. Online, the case exploded far faster than any official search. Amateur investigators and true crime communities pored over Gabby's own travel videos, cross-referencing landmarks in the background against National Park Service records, trying to trace her last confirmed locations frame by frame, in some cases, reconstructing her route faster than the agencies actually assigned to find her. On September 19, search teams recovered a body in a remote stretch of the Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming, near the last location Gabby's messages had placed her. Dental records confirmed what her family had feared for over a week. The coroner's office later ruled her death a homicide, caused by strangulation, injuries investigators said were consistent with the pattern already visible on that body camera footage from weeks earlier. Brian Laundrie had vanished days before the body was even found, telling his parents he was going for a walk in a nature reserve near their home in Northport, Florida. He never came back. A weeks-long search by the FBI and local police, cutting through swampland and dense brush, turned up nothing at all. On October 20, more than a month after Gabby's body was found, searchers combing that same reserve found skeletal remains, partially submerged near a hiking trail. Dental records confirmed they belonged to Brian Laundrie. Beside the remains, investigators recovered a notebook. Inside it, in his own handwriting, was a confession, one the FBI would later confirm, word for word, as authentic. Among the pages, 3 words would end up in nearly every headline written about this case: "I ended her life." He had taken his own life sometime after writing them. In January of 2022, the FBI's Denver field office made it official. In a public statement, they confirmed that the notebook, combined with the physical evidence recovered at the scene, established Laundrie's sole responsibility for Gabby's death. No other person, they said, had ever been identified as involved. Every logical investigative step, in their words, had been completed. The criminal case was closed. It has never reopened since. Gabby's family didn't stop there. They filed a civil lawsuit against the Moab Police Department, arguing that the officers who separated the couple that August night had failed to recognize textbook, well-documented signs of coercive control and domestic violence, and that failure, they argued, may have cost Gabby her life. A judge dismissed that specific civil claim in November 2024. But the questions the lawsuit raised about that traffic stop didn't disappear along with the ruling. They became training material still cited by departments today. In the years since, Gabby's family has turned the worst thing that ever happened to them into the Gabby Petito Foundation, which funds resources for domestic violence survivors and pushes for better officer training on recognizing coercive control, not just visible bruises. Several states have since passed or strengthened laws requiring officers responding to a domestic incident to separate and interview each party alone, out of the other's earshot. It's a change investigators now say might have altered what happened in that Utah parking lot, if it had existed just 1 year earlier. Advocates who work with domestic violence survivors point to this case constantly now, in trainings and in testimony, precisely because the footage already existed. The failure wasn't a lack of evidence, it was a lack of recognition. The hardest part of this case was never really a mystery of who. It was captured, in real time, on video, a warning that nobody in a position to help chose to hear. Gabby Petito didn't need her case to go viral in order to matter. She needed one different decision, on one ordinary afternoon in Utah, weeks before anyone else was even searching for her. Her name is the one people remember. But the pattern that killed her, a victim mistaken for the calm one, a warning sign filed away instead of acted on, plays out in homes far from any highway in Utah, far more often than most people realize. If this story affected you the way it affected us, there are domestic violence resources linked in the description below, for yourself, or for someone you're worried about but aren't sure yet how to help.